Hello, this will be my review for Pontypool. I can't remember the director's name at the moment. I guess I'll look that up for the description later. But yeah, it's a small, very, lesser known movie, for sure. A very, very small budget. The whole thing is shot in, like, a single location for, like, 90% of the film, and aside from that, I think the only other real spot that you see filmed is just some road at night. So yeah, very, very, very low budget film. Very, very little known film. I'm assuming they also didn't have a lot of money for advertising. Yeah, Pontypool. It's a movie that I got kind of as a recommendation. You know, on Imager, they have every once in a while you'll see one of those lists of movies that you guys should check out, yada yada yada, and they're kind of mixed bags a lot of the time, but they get upvoted a bunch because people don't actually like to see the movies, they'll just judge it by face value. Not to say that there aren't a lot of good movies that are recommended on there, it's just, like I said, it's a mixed bag. In any case, Pontypool was a movie that I thought looked kind of interesting. It's an adaptation of a book. The book is called Pontypool Changed Everything. I guess I decided to shorten the title, and I think it sounds better. In any case, it was adapted. A screenplay was written by the author of the book. So, there you go. Anything that needed to be included as far as authorial intent is concerned is probably included in the movie. I will say up front a number of good things about this movie. The acting, by and large, was really good, especially the main character. The main character, and I'll get to who the characters are in a second. It was shot well enough. I mean, there really isn't a whole lot to shoot, I guess, because like I said, you're only in one real location for the majority of the film, but at the very least, it wasn't bad shooting. I can say that much. It didn't look bad. Written well, for the most part. There's one serious exception to that. It's my major problem with the movie, but we'll be getting to that later. Yeah, it just does a lot of things very well. It's very unique in its setup. It's a zombie movie, so you know there's a lot of things in this movie that you already know walking into the movie. But it's at least a unique perspective on the zombie movie, I suppose you could say. Starting off, as far as unique is concerned, it's more of a psychological thing as opposed to you see almost no gore in the movie. I mean, you definitely see some gore, for sure. But very little of it. Most of it is actually just hearing shit over the phone, you know, that kind of shit, and not knowing what's going on. That's most of the horror from the movie, and it works very well. Yeah, there's that. Also, another unique aspect is our main character and the two side main characters, co-main characters. I don't know the proper term for it, but you get what I'm saying. In any case, so our three main characters, they are radio show people. I wanted to say radio show hosts, but only one of them is the host. Then there's the producer, and then there's like this tech girl, I think. I think she's the tech girl. She does a lot of knob turning, so I'm assuming she's the tech girl. She also answers phones and whatnot. But yeah, three main characters. They are, I won't give you the names because I can't remember their names. I'm shit with names, sorry. We have a shock jock guy, he's the host. He's clearly been he's recently lost his job at a much larger radio station in a larger city, and now he's doing this radio station out of the basement of a church in this small ass town called Pontypool. The town's name is also called Pontypool, by the way. So yeah, there's his little deal. You've got the producer of the show. We don't really know too much about her, but whatever. As far as backstory is concerned, not at least compared to the shock jock. Also, there is the tech girl. She is an army vet, I guess. I don't know. I can't remember where she was deployed or what kind of honor she got. I think she got some kind of, you know, real small award of some sort. At least it was given to her from the town at some event in the recent past. But in any case, so that's our three main characters. They are, like I said, they're holed up in this radio station that's being broadcast out of the basement of a church in this small town. The movie never really leaves this location once it gets to this location. The movie's opening scene is the shock jock driving to the radio station. Then he gets there, and then we're there for the rest of the movie. There we go. Now, What's unique about it being a radio station, you might ask? It's just another location to hold off zombies, right? Well, yes and no. You notice a lot of zombie movies when the plot eventually gets to the point where they need the characters to know what's going on. It's usually done by the characters tune into the TV or the radio or some other form of media, and they get the story there. And that, it's something that makes sense. It's a way to service the plot without it feeling forced. Now, in this movie, they don't have the ability to do that. They are, the media, and no other media station is really covering this event yet because it is, as far as we can tell, 100% localized to this small town of Pontypool. So and nothing really goes on here. No spotlight's really on here. At a point in the movie, they get a call from the BBC to get some information. That's when at the point in the movie where normally in a zombie movie your main character would be tuning into the radio, at that point in the movie, instead, the BBC is contacting this radio station so that they can in turn start broadcasting, which is kind of interesting that you get to see it from that other perspective. You see it from the radio host's perspective, and they have to figure out absolutely everything on their own based on people calling in and getting through all the frantic babbling that they're doing because they're panicking, right, on the phones. A good bit of the first act of the movie, not a whole lot of zombie shit's happening at all. You get to see, though, that the shock jock is still adjusting to this new locale, I guess. He's used to cities where he can just frustrate, he can, what's it called? Basically fear-mongering gets him a larger audience in the city. He tries that here, and the producer's like, you gotta stop that. That doesn't work out here. That just annoys people. I feel like this movie, that brings me to another point, I feel like this movie is trying really hard to make a lot of statements. Some of it is decently subtle. Actually, a lot of it is at least decently subtle. Other bits, it's a little more forced, especially at the very end of the movie where the main character has this little spiel that he goes on just before it cuts out, and it's kind of annoying. But oh well, it's fine really. It's nothing too horrible at all, ever, in the movie. In any case, let's talk about the zombies in this movie. Now these are, okay, I don't know if I mentioned this already, but the author doesn't think of them as zombies. Sucks. They're zombies because they're zombies. These are like your 28 Days Later zombies, though. Bear that in mind. They're not like undead. They're like crazy in the head, infected, ragey people. I guess crazy would be a better term than ragey. They're not... Yeah. Anyways. Oh, goodness gracious. But the way the virus is spread is the serious issue with this movie. Like I said, this movie does a lot of things right. It has some unique aspects to it that keep it feeling fresh despite it being, another zombie movie. So I really want to like this movie, and maybe I'm going to be too hard on this movie for what I'm about to bring up, but whatever. I'm going to at least talk to you about it. About half-ish way through the movie, don't quote me on that, I'm terrible at time, we get to meet a certain Dr. Mendez. Now this is immediately after our army vet girl. She starts acting a little funny. Immediately after this happens, the doctor shows up. And he crawls in through this back window of the radio station, and the producer catches him sneaking in, and she's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Shh, whatever." She becomes very clear that he's not a threat. He's just he's looking for a place to hide out. Also, earlier in the movie, we heard that a private practice run by a Dr. Mendez was being overrun by a mob of angry people, and this was before that this was at that point before they realized these were zombies. Yeah, this is the Dr. Mendez from earlier in the movie he's mentioned. Doesn't really explain to you how he gets away. However, at the same time, zombies aren't hard to outwit, so I could see him slipping out the back or something like that. I don't know. That's not the problem. The problem is that he starts explaining to us how this virus works. If you paying attention to the movie, you understand that this Dr. Mendez had at best a day, maybe a day, if not less, if not I'd be willing to put my money on it being a couple hours that he had to really thoroughly, study what was going on. Yet somehow he's able to know all the, he was able to figure out so much about this virus. First off, he starts off by telling the other characters and the audience by continuation that the virus is not spread by a virus. In fact, it may very well have no resemblance to a virus at all. However, it does behave like it in certain ways. See, what's going on is the English language is infected. Yes. Yes. The English language, the entire English language, the language itself, words and shit, man, that's what's infected. It's not people. I guess it infects people, but what is causing these infections in people isn't being transmitted from person to person per se. It's the language that's transferring. It's not airborne, it's not waterborne, it's not foodborne, it's not an STD, which would be weird for a zombie virus. It is language-borne, if you can stomach that, which I couldn't. And this is our first problem. Like I said, this guy's clearly not had a lot of time to work with any kind of patients, let alone, you know, in a controlled environment. Like, he'd have to restrain them and stuff, and, you know, have controls and everything. And somehow he's managed to rule out, you know, viruses, bacteria, parasites, environmental factors, you know, toxins and shit, chemicals. He's ruled out every other option possible, but, and I'm quoting him here, a god bug that has infected the English language. He's ruled out everything else in a matter of hours to maybe a day. He's ruled out everything else. Out of a private practice, he's done this. Alright, how did you do this? How did you perform this miracle of science? Well, he never tells us. However, the characters in the movie that he is talking to do not question it. So I guess the audience isn't really meant to question it either, which is kind of insulting. This is my biggest problem with this problem I have, is that they act like it makes sense. Like when this doctor first says it's a god bug that has infected the English language, the characters that we've been following don't immediately go, "Oh, you're a crackpot." They go, "Oh, okay. What else do you know?" And they're not being sarcastic in saying that. They're legitimately asking him for more stuff. They're listening in, and they're like, "Yes, this makes sense. I will continue to listen to this without really questioning it." What? I mean, there's like a moment of like disbelief, but I guess you could just chalk that up to surprise. Really, they're more surprised than anything else. Oh god, and it brings up, and because it's just the English language that's infected, it brings up so many issues elsewhere in film. Like, okay, like I said earlier, this outbreak is contained entirely to Pontypool. If it's the English language that's infected, then may I ask, why is it just Pontypool instead of, you know, the entire English-speaking world? One would think it would be the entire English-speaking world. Also, I should probably clarify a little bit. Everybody can be infected by a specific word from the English language. It's different for everybody. However, they tend to be words of endearment, like sweetheart and honey. In any case, so yeah, why is it that everybody can only be infected by a single word, despite the fact that the entire language is infected? Why does it work like that? It's never explained. It's also not explained why this hasn't spread outside of Pontypool. It's not explained. Actually, no, I take it back. They try to explain it a little bit. He says something to the effect of, when somebody becomes infected by their word, that's how the virus replicates, which still doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because by that logic, you'd only be able to be infected by people who are already infected, and they only ever repeat their words or things they overhear. In any case, it would be a lot harder to become infected, to the point where it would not be nearly a non-concern. That doesn't make much sense at all. Again, the main characters, they don't acknowledge that. They don't acknowledge how little sense it makes. They don't acknowledge how in the dark they should be. They act like it makes sense. They ask a few questions, implying, like I said, that the audience is just supposed to roll with this and also be as ignorant. There's a lot more issues with this, and it's so painful too, because, like I said, this is a movie I really want to like. and it's just such an easily solved problem. Like, you don't need to have a god bug. You could just you could still have English. Also, another question: why is it English? Why is English the only language infected? Because like they say that specifically in the movie, and they say also that you can use other languages like French, and or whatever, to communicate, and you have no chance of getting infected by French or any other language. I mentioned French specifically because that's the one they use, being that this is taking place in Canada. Yeah. And like I said, this is, like I was going to say, this is something that would be not too difficult to fix. For example, and I know this doesn't fix all the problems, but this does fix a number of them, and it at least has more sense going to it. Have it be a standard virus. There's no symptoms to it whatsoever until you hear your trigger word. What's happened is the whole area of Pontypool has silently become infected without their knowing, and now at this point people are starting to be triggered, and you'll have the same. Mechanically, it would work the same for the movie, like plot-wise and everything. It would just make more sense to the audience, and it would make more sense that the characters in the movie are questioning it less than they should be, because it's a legitimate virus as opposed to this god bug thing that they pull out of their ass for the purpose of the plot. And I'm not saying that it's a horrible idea at the face of it, because it actually has some good merits. It being that becoming a zombie is based on you hearing words. Suddenly, two major defenses against zombie apocalypses become actually part of the threat. You can't group up, and you can't communicate well, because a larger group you have, the higher the chances are of you accidentally infecting at least one person whenever you say anything. And the more you communicate, obviously, the more you're rolling the dice. Yeah, so I could go into a lot more detail about this this god bug that they have for the movie, but I won't, because that would just take up too much damn time. Just know that it makes very little sense at all, and I'm talking in circles here, but it makes very little sense, and they act like it does, and that is a problem. If you have something that doesn't make sense, then have your characters acknowledge how little sense it makes. Have your characters be confused. Your characters should not just roll with the punches when they have no idea where the punches are coming from. Another issue, as far it's similar, it's related to this, is, like I said, this doctor is the one explaining this to our main characters. And he's just the doctor character itself. He's the main. When I said that there is an exclusion to this movie being well written, it's the god bug thing that makes no sense for the plot, and it makes no sense for it makes sense for the plot. I guess you need it for the plot, but it makes no sense for anything else. And this doctor, the doctor is written fucking terribly. It's absolutely. Well, I mean, as far as the words contained in his dialogue, it's fine, but it's in delivery, and I feel like it's in the direction of the delivery. They wanted it, and you can tell based on certain things he says that he's acting the way he should be acting. It's not the actor's fault, it's the director's fault. It's the intent of the movie that's playing here. And that is that he's matter of fact, he's very analytical, very detached emotionally from the situation. To a very, very, very distracting degree. Like, at a point in the movie, spoiler alert, a point in the movie, I've already spoiled a bit, but this is a big spoiler, I guess. The tech girl, army vet lady, she has become infected, and she is killing herself on trying to get into the sound booth to attack the rest of the main characters. She's killing herself trying to get in, and while this is going on, and excluding this doctor, you take him out of this scene, and this would be a very emotional scene. This is a character that we could tell is a very sweet person, not overly sweet. It wasn't overdone. She's not some like Mother Teresa that also served in the army. This isn't. It's not ridiculous. She's just a very sweet person. You could tell that The producer, at least, cared a great deal, for her. They'd been friends for a long time, at least, if not even in some way related. Shock jock even worked up a bit because people are dying. He has at least some. He knows this girl to a degree, and she's killing herself trying to get in to hurt them, and it would have been a very emotional scene. It was shot well for what was needed. But this fucking doctor is standing there in this room explaining what we are seeing to us while we see it. He's giving us very little extra information that we wouldn't be able to glean or infer just from watching the scene. Furthermore, he's doing it while this shit is supposed to be hitting an emotional note. He's doing it in this way where it's like, oh, would you look at that, and look at this, and did you know this, and did you know that, and this and that, and exposition, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm sorry, I know this must be emotional for you, he says something to that degree, which I guess the movie acknowledges how fucking ridiculously emotionally detached this dude is. So, I mean, at least they acknowledge it. But, aside from that, fuck. And it's like, really, like I said, a big boon to this movie was the people having to figure out absolutely everything on their own and then report it to people who were listening in. That's lost entirely when you just introduce this doctor character to exposition the problems away, or the mysteries away, in ways that don't make sense, in ways that are, like I said, delivered poorly, executed poorly, I should say. Delivery kind of implies that it's the actor's fault. It's just very... It just throws away a lot of what the movie was doing very well up until this point. But excluding that, okay, so moving on with the movie, another issue that showed up, and aside from this, there weren't too many serious issues like this one towards the end of the movie, but definitely second half of the second act and the rest of the third act, there was a lot more cliches that didn't make sense. I'll be the first one to tell you that cliches in a movie are fine when they make sense with the plot. In fact, cliches can be good in a movie when they make sense with the plot. Don't avoid a cliche just for the sake of avoiding a cliche. If it's natural and it makes sense with what's happening, just do it, But these are cliches that start happening towards the end of the movie that are clearly just there because they need something to be there. They need something to happen here, so something else happens here, and it's a bit lazy. For example, earlier in the movie, we have, part of their broadcast was they brought in this Arab family, and they were going to sing the story of Lawrence of Arabia. And at the end of their little bit on the radio, they finished up their song, and then one of the little girls, this looked like a family, one of the little girls of this family, she starts acting a little weird. In a way, later on in the movie, we realize that girl was becoming infected at that point. That she had heard her trigger word and she was becoming infected. Now, later in the movie, we meet this little girl again. At this point, she is infected. Here's the issue. First of all, this little girl who is clearly with her family, or at least people who would be acting as her guardians, is alone, completely alone. I would assume that this singing group left the building after their bit was done. So why did she not leave with them? If they didn't leave after that, where have they been this whole time? This church does not seem very large at all. They make the rounds pretty quickly in this place. Sorry. So that doesn't make any sense at all. Furthermore, a defining characteristic of the zombies in this movie is how obvious they are. They feel the need to be always making some kind of sound at all times. Whether it's repeating their own trigger word, trying to make sentences out of it but failing. Whether it's repeating shit that they've heard recently, like if you say something to them, they'll be like a parrot sometimes, I guess, and just start repeating it because they're crazy. Or just trying to imitate sounds they hear, like one of them imitates the sound of a tea kettle hissing at one point. Because, but this little girl, who is clearly infected, was sitting completely still and silent. This also goes against some other things we know about the zombies at this point, like they need to find a victim or they will start tearing themselves apart. Well, she hasn't been tearing herself apart, so that's another thing that doesn't make sense. Also, for this, I'm like, all right, so why was all that? Well, it's so that the cliche would work. The cliche, of course, in this case, is they walk past a zombie without noticing it, and then it sneaks up behind them. Meanwhile, the audience notices the zombie before they do, and then one of the characters notices the zombie and warns the person sneaking up behind. In this case, the producer notices the zombie sneaking up behind the shock jock. She warns him. They fight the girl off and kill her, out of necessity. And like I said, it's stuff. It didn't make any sense at all why this scenario came about, but it's something that they needed to happen for the plot. I guess, for the scare of having a zombie sneak up on somebody. That I guess they needed that kind of a cheap scare, which kind of disappoints me. And 2, because later on the plot demands that they had killed somebody because they wanted the producer's trigger word to be the word kill, so that they could have the shock jock learn how to cure the infection by, it's so stupid, by associating the person's trigger word with another word. Like, what he does is he convinces the producer that kill doesn't mean kill, that kill means kiss. And that's how he cures her. You have to do it while they're becoming infected, I'm assuming. And then after he succeeds in curing her, she says, kill me, and he kisses her. And, aha, I get it, it's funny. To some degree, I guess. It's like they had to have them kill the girl so that they could argue over who killed the girl. Was it the shock jock? You know, even that argument felt a little bit at least contrived. But like I said, it's up until about the midpoint of the movie, everything was moving perfectly good. After that, though, they started throwing away a lot of the stuff that was making the movie so unique. And like I said, that's very unfortunate. Overall, though, a lot of this movie was done very well. Maybe I am being... Side note real quick. The way they cure the word, the way their cure thing that they got going, I'm calling BS on that too, along with everything else to do with their god bug. BS on all of it. In any case, maybe I'm being too hard on them for this. You know, maybe it's not as big a problem as I'm making it out to be. It's a possibility, but it was very, very distracting. It completely broke immersion for me as soon as he said God bug. As soon as he started explaining all this, it completely broke immersion. From that point on, everything plot-wise and everything involving, whenever something was mentioned that directly referenced the mechanics of this virus, it immediately broke any immersion I had regained over time. Immediately re-broke the immersion. A lot of these cliches that they were using as shortcuts immediately broke immersion. This doctor destroyed immersion every time he opened his fat mouth. And that's a big problem, because he has this real lack of consistency. That's the big thing. Like, these are things that would normally... these problems are things that would normally damage your immersion in the movie. But considering, like I said, how inconsistent it is with the first half of the movie, it's just even more detrimental. But overall, I think I'm going to give this movie a very generous 6 out of 10. I'm avoiding a 5 out of 10 because... actually, no, I take that back. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. Fuck it. It gets a 5 out of 10. I was disappointed by the end of the movie. It's funny, too, because I had seen about half of a trailer for it, and then I had forgotten about the trailer entirely by the time I rewatched the movie. By the time I watched the movie. And all the hype that I had for the movie came from watching the movie. And that hype was then destroyed by the movie. It's really, really a problem when you can say that the movie disappointed you when you weren't even hyped up by a trailer. So that's that. Now, like I said, maybe I'm being too hard on it for this flaw, the main couple flaws. I don't think so. Now that I've spent more time on it, but I will admit that it is a possibility that I'm being too rough on this movie. However, this is a 5 out of 10 for me, like I've already said, and I'm probably going to repeat it again, but who knows. But hey, first review that's not a 7 out of 10. There you go. Got that out. In any case, it is about 6 a.m. and I haven't slept yet. But I don't feel tired, and that's always nice. In any case, have a great day or whatever. Bye-bye.